PS podcast. I'm Jordan Pine Erickson. I wanted to start off by having a moment of silence for the person that still suffers with addiction, repressed thoughts, depression, any mental illness. So on the count of three, we'll do a moment of silence. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you for that. And today my guest is Meyla. Meyla, how do you pronounce it?
Meyla.
Meyla. Okay. Go ahead and introduce yourself and where you went, what years, all that stuff.
So my name is Meyla Atkinson, and I went to CrossCreek from January 26, 1999 until February 10th, 2002. I was in E group with Brian Hansen and M group with Dr. Seeley, and then Norm Tybo took over from that, and then Norm was my therapist at upper levels too.
Okay. And did you get transported there, or what happened there? Like, did you get transported, or did your parents take it?
My parents took me.
Okay.
So we went on a vacation, and I knew I was going there. I even read the parent manual before I went there, but there really wasn't much that would warn me how crazy the place was going to be. Like there were a lot of rules, but it was more like how they interpreted the rules that made it difficult more than the stuff that we could read it.
Yeah. Walk us through like your first day there, like your first few days or whatnot. How long did it take for everything to sink in that this place was crazy or whatnot? Or did someone go over the rules with you? Did they give you a buddy? Any of that?
Yeah, we had they call them hope buddies, helping orient partners in excellence, I think it was. And we had to stay within arm's length of our hope buddy for, I think it was like at least 5 days when we first got there. And you'd still get in trouble if you broke any rules, but at least they would let you know, oh, don't do that, you'll get in trouble. But yeah, when I got there, they strip searched us. We got down to our underwear and bra, and they were looking for like us hiding contraband, and that kind of thing. And then I was sitting in they put all the new kids in the blue room. I think it was called that because the carpet was blue. But I waited there for a while they organized all my stuff and went through it. And then Ron Garrett came in and talked to me some. And he's like, so you're the new girl. And I ended up telling him that I thought he had escaped from an insane asylum. And everyone was just like completely taken aback that I would say that to him, because he was the person in charge and he had the power to make my life miserable if he wanted to.
Why did you say that? What about him made you say that?
He seemed like really active, like really pacing. Like people, my uncle is schizophrenic, and so I got to see some of the like behavior and mannerisms and like excitability. He didn't seem like a normal person. Like a cult leader, really with really high thoughts about himself. He really thought a lot about himself.
Okay,
Uh,
kind of like stuck up.
yeah, yeah. But like he thought the world revolved around him. And like literally the whole place did. Um, like if you pissed him off, like well, he put me on indefinite punishment like more than once. Um,
What kind of punishment? Did you go to intervention or study hall or?
yeah, yeah, I was I got I got in trouble there. It was hard not to. There were rules about everything, and a lot of them were not like conductive to life. Like being on silence all the time. I swear we were on silence like 23 hours or more a day. Silence in line, silence waiting, silence in the classroom, like in waiting in the med line, just all the time. And that didn't really work well when someone had been traumatized. And I had some friends, like that place was really traumatizing. So like someone could be having flashbacks and the rule said we weren't allowed to touch them for more than 3 seconds at a time. That was a sexual misconduct. So if my friend is having flashbacks, I'm not supposed to hug her for more than 3 seconds or um, try to console her like that. And that kind of thing was really hard. And the kind of consequence we could get for touching someone for 3 seconds or more was to lose all of our levels. It was a category 4 infraction out of 5 levels of difficulty. Um, and um, it would mean like at least a week of time in the tape room on staff buddy and losing all the privileges. And I might add months onto someone's stay.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that I ran into all the time. Um, it wasn't, the rules were just so weirdly enforced. Like there was a rule you can't do sexual misconduct, but no one would ever think some of the things they thought were sex. Like putting any body part inside any other person's body was considered a sexual misconduct. So if you were helping someone clean their ears and you wanted to like scratch the inside of their ear to get an ear flake out, that was considered sex. Like it was such a different world than the world that we're in, and like really structured. Every part of the day there was something that we had to be doing. Um, and almost no time to talk with other people and no communication out into the real world so
Yeah.
that you can check what other people think about what's going on. It became more normal over time.
Yeah.
Like these weird things are just going to happen. The cycle is going to go on. Um they're going to do whatever they want, and it became very normal over 3 years.
Yeah. How long were you there? 3 years?
3 years, 2 weeks, and 4 hours.
Okay. Uh, did you? How long after you got there did you go through your first seminar?
Um, I went into discovery. Um, I think I'd been there about a month and a half. Um, but before I even went into seminar, there was the terrifying experience of hearing everyone else go through seminar, because seminar is not a silent process. It's a process that can be heard throughout the entire building, and even in the yard outside the building. And sometimes it would include really loud noises, screaming, lots of people crying, sobbing in unison, sobbing that would last for hours and hours and hours, and weird noises like they had us, they duct tape a towel. They rolled it up at like a baseball bat and then duct tape it into this thing that we could hit the ground with to try to just as part of the seminar. And that was really loud to hear from outside of the seminar. And then you'd see kids leave the seminar and they'd be crying and they'd be really upset, and maybe they'd be on silence, or maybe they'd be talking quietly to each other. But it was a really terrifying experience before I even went in and did any seminars. And that is part of the design. That's part of, they want people to come in already unsettled.
Yeah. Did you see anybody come out with like a superhuman like smile on their face, like they were high?
Yeah. There was love bombing a lot. There would be different sections of the seminar that would have different, there were really high highs and really low lows. But yeah, sometimes you'd see people come out and they looked like you had just told them that they got a free car, or you had just told them that they got to go home, or like you had just told them that the best news of their life. And that was usually, most of the seminars were 3 days long, and that was usually something that happened like on the third day, or the last day. And that's one of the things that reminds me a lot of a cult, is how they would manipulate people's emotions so much and try to get people really outside of what they were comfortable with, but too much of an extent. For example, in Focus, the second seminar, they had every single focus had different people play different parts. For instance, there was a person who played Jonathan Livingston Seagull. There was a woman who played Lady in Red. These were all characters that would show up in different seminars, and the girls and the boys would have to play a particular character. In mine, I was a sumo wrestler, but some of the boys had to cross-dress for their performance and dress sexy, and then like kind of like a stripper kind of thing, and forcing a child to do this in order to get to go home is just absolutely appalling. I can understand people wanting to get out of their comfort zone, but you can't force a child to cross-dress and striptease. That's not, that's criminal.
Yeah. For sure. What was I definitely agree. So when you went in, walk us through like Discovery. Like what do you remember about Discovery, and like how did it affect you? And then just walk through like the seminars in general. Like how did they affect you like in the long run?
I went through Discovery. I had this constant fear that I was going to do something wrong. They wouldn't have put it that way. They would have said, like, well, they said, based on results, you have what you intended. And they used that to such an extreme that they said, like, well, anything that happened to you is your fault. And you must have wanted it in some way. And they said this to girls who had been raped. They said this to children who've been molested when they were tiny. They said this to everyone, regardless of what their issue was. And because one of the reasons I was there was because I was sad that my grandma had died. They said, well, based on results, if you wanted her alive, she would still be here. And I took care of her for 8 years. I lived with her on the weekends. Like, she lived 8 years longer than the doctors thought she was going to live, because we took her into our family, and we gave our heart and soul for years. So I had to write essays about how I just wanted my grandmother alive more, that she would still be here. And that is just heartbreaking to tell a child that really wants her family to be there. And they told this to kids whose parents had died. They told adopted kids that based on results, you have what you intended. Like, why did you want your family to leave you? Like, literally anything that could go wrong, and was blamed on the child. And the way they explained it was that even if you had a meteor land on, you chose to be in that location where the meteor landed. So it was your choice, and therefore, you, on some level, you wanted this to happen.
Yeah.
So
that, yeah. Go ahead.
that was really toxic. And we had to write about it, not just a little bit, but like pages front and back without faces about how these things applied to our lives. And like, none of that was helpful. Like, none of it was true. Like, you can't wish people to live. Like, parents, if so, no children would ever die, because parents would just wish their kids to be alive. Like,
Yeah.
so there was a lot of like psychological manipulation, and like getting up on chairs, and people being confronted in front of the group. And parents were supposed to go through the same seminar too, but their seminars were different. I talked to parents that went through the seminars, and theirs were way more mild. No one was being told that their rape was their fault, like, or that they were somehow responsible or accountable or anything like that. It was really different for parents. The seminars took up a lot of time in the day. Like, they would run from like 8 o'clock in the morning until 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and then you would have a couple of hours of homework to do, and not be assigned the time to actually do it. So you had to find some way to get the work done. I mean, people would write in line, people would write during breakfast, people would do all sorts of things to get done. I was sneaking up, like staying up later and sneaking into the bathroom and writing by the light of the bathroom, and then leaving the door open so that, like, in the bathroom, and writing by the light that came out from underneath it. But that just made the sleep deprivation so much worse. And the fact that you didn't have any time to decompress from the seminar, it was really overwhelming. It would go from really, really happy to really, really sad, to really scared, just like bam, 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 bam. The facilitator was the guy who ran the seminar. And his mood would change on a dime. And some of them were more tolerable than others. I'm not going to say any of them were good, but I'm going to say definitely some of them were worse. For example, like Dwayne was really bad, really abusive, really screaming at children, really in their face, even hit a kid a couple of times. Like, yeah, you went from an environment of being really understimulated every day with lots of time to think and lots of time of nothing to do, but stand in line silently or sit there silently for an hour or whatever, into a situation of complete overwhelm and overload. And it was really overwhelming and really deliberately so.
Yeah. So in focus, now that we're talking about seminars too, what do you think the hardest part for you focus was? What did you think about the lifeboat process?
Lifeboat was one of the worst things that happened in the program. I took it really bad. And it was a really awful thing to go through. I have everyone that I tell about it, like, that has experience, like mental health field, is absolutely horrified that anyone would attempt that, like, on anyone, like, much less children. I wasn't very popular. Kids didn't like me, probably because I was weird. I am still weird. It's part of my identity, and I'm okay with that. But in the program, sticking out could cause problems. And so Lifeboat is a guided visualization exercise, and everyone lay down on the floor, and we walked through like a scenario, and it's like you're going on a cruise, and the things are going really good, and then in the middle of the night the boat crashes and there's not enough lifeboats, and we had to vote on who would live and who would die. And we only got like 3 or 4 live votes, and everyone else we had to vote to die. And so we all lined up in 2 lines facing each other, And it just went down the line until everyone had told everyone else aggressively with this chopping motion of the hand that they needed to die. And everyone was sobbing, and no one wanted to do it. No one was happy about the situation. And so the people who got the most live votes were going to go on the lifeboat, but they only got to go on the lifeboat if they voted themselves to live too, which you didn't find out until the very end. Most people didn't even think that they were going to vote themselves. They had a mirror so that you could tell yourself to die. And that the amount of screaming and wailing and genuine heartache by maybe 30, 40, 50 people in the same carpeted, tiny basement room is just, it's really overwhelming. And in the end, the lifeboat sank and everyone died. So it was like a status thing for the people who got to live on the lifeboat. It was like, these are the best kids, the kids who are believing the program the most. But it was so horrible and overwhelming, and I don't think anyone should do it, but definitely not be forced to do it in order to get back to your family.
For sure, for sure. What level did you get to? Did you graduate?
Yeah, I got to level 6. I still don't know how I managed to leave when I did. About a week before I graduated, Ron Garrett, we had these notes that we would write to each other when we left, with like hopes and fears and dreams and like positive things to help inspire kids when they got home. And I asked to write out a form, and on my form I asked people what state they were from. And Ron Garrett didn't like that. He had previously told me that I was allowed to ask that once I was on level 5 or 6, but he didn't want me to ask that before. And when I actually went to do it, he wasn't happy with it. So I don't even know what they gave me, but they dropped my level and they put me in the tape room again. They put me back in worksheets. Put me on staff buddy, arm's length from staff. And at that point, I had cooperated with them I had been there for over 3 years. I was 18 years old. I could legally leave. I didn't have a court order or anything. And when he did that, something in me just snapped, and I couldn't handle how much they were just screwing around with us. Like I I just felt like I was never going to go home after 3 years and doing all that they wanted and getting level 6 and like finally almost making it. And I was in the tape room wearing orange on Staff Buddy, and I told them I want my exit plan. I said I don't care what it is, because they hadn't really given me much details about it. I told them that I didn't want to go home, because I knew I didn't have the street smarts to be able to make it out in the real world without help from my parents. And Ron Garrett told us that we would get $100 and a bus ticket to Las Vegas, and that we were going to go and be prostitutes there, and that was basically the only hope for kids who were leaving when they were 18. So when I asked to leave, I had no idea what I was trying to into or for, or whether my parents would take me back or what was going on. I was just done, and they wouldn't let me go. And I still don't know why, or why they haven't gotten in legal trouble for that, but they wouldn't let me leave for a week. And when I finally did get out, they just sent me to PC2, the second seminar with parents. They just sent me there like nothing had happened, and didn't even tell my parents what had happened. Didn't tell them that I had asked to go home. Didn't tell them that they had put me on Staff Buddy again. Like nothing. And not even a year after I was out, I called the FBI about it, because like it's kidnapping to let a full-grown adult, like, to keep me there when I was like legally an adult and legally allowed to go. And I reported it, but nothing ever came of it.
That's crazy. So that's the first time I've heard that they would tell people that they would just be prostitutes or whatever. That's crazy.
Yeah, that was a common thing. It was like they'd say like, oh, you get to the bus stop there and you're gonna go find your John, or you're gonna go find your pimp is gonna come and pick you up. Like that they just lurk like vultures at the bus stop, and that you're gonna show up with your $100 and someone's gonna steal your $100 and then take you off to be a sex worker. So that was basically like, there was a lot of threatening of that kind of thing. Like, they were told that at other facilities that there was sexual abuse going on, and that kids were threatened to get sent to a more abusive facility. Like we were told that the night watch at Tranquility Bay would molest the girls overnight. And I heard that directly from girls who came from Tranquility Bay to ours. So I didn't see it firsthand, but it was definitely stuff that we were threatened with, and that other kids would talk about.
Did you ever hear about any of this stuff? I know you kind of just went into it, but did you ever hear about any stuff at CrossCreek doing anything with any of the students sexual?
One of the staff members actually married a student.
At CrossCreek?
Yeah, he quit, and He was the Radio 3. So he was like a shift supervisor. And he was also like really into PE and like athletics. He wasn't the PE teacher, but he did like we had
like morning workouts and stuff.
no, we had a walk that we went on. We did the subway hike at one point in time. That was like an upper level activity. It's a hike in Zion National Park, and it's like 13 miles as the crow flies, but it's all up and down and up and down and up and down. And some of us got to do that when we were trusted enough to be able to go.
Did you do that?
Yeah, I did that. Yeah, it was really
What?
exhausting. I did not know that I had no ability to walk 13 miles. But
when you did that, I'm just curious because I went to Wilderness.
yeah.
Is it similar to that? Like, do you get, is it a several day thing or is it a day?
One day it was like we got up early in the morning. We went there. We had our like little medicine bag thing. We had to crochet a little pouch to take with us. And then we collected rocks and like a little stick and like some other stuff. I don't remember what all it was, but there was some significance to each little item. And we had to collect them on the trail and then put them in our bag. And then we got to take our bag back. I say bag, but this was like a coin purse sized little thing.
Almost like a medicine bag. Do you know what a medicine bag is?
Yeah. It I would like to point out that none of the people doing this were Native American or had any. I feel like it was really appropriating someone else's culture, like really fake Native American kind of stuff.
Yeah. Did they have you do any other sort of challenges when you got in the upper levels? Like, was there any trust falls or anything?
No, no, there was a trust fall in seminar once, I think. Yeah. But I don't remember which one.
I can't remember which one either, but I vaguely remember them doing a trust fall in one of them. Yes.
Yeah, and like do I trust you? I trust you, I don't trust you kind of exercises, and like the red black game, which was like a game designed so that no one could win unless we knew their little trick, and designed to make us do stupid stuff that would get us in trouble. Just like nitpicking every word that you said in a context where you're just having some fun animosity between teams, like, ooh, we're gonna win, we're gonna beat them at this, and or oh, they're gonna win, they're gonna lose the next round, ha ha ha. And they acted like this was like life altering, huge bad things we were saying when it was just teams getting excited. And it was even really mild, like even by football standards. Like it's all supposed to be a big mirror on your life and like show more of like give you insight into what's going on, but it's just stupid mind games. And I know some people who have liked the seminars, and so like, oh, it's a break from the silence all the time. But I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I was really overwhelmed by it.
Did you staff any seminars?
I did staff discovery. I was supposed to staff another seminar in order to graduate, but they let me anyway. I never had all the points line up right to be able to staff the seminars, because even when I was trying really, really hard to follow the rules and I was trusted, I would still get rule violations all the time. I was diagnosed with ADHD before I got to the program, and there's a lot of stuff with that like disorganization and losing stuff and dropping my pencil and like losing my water bottle. There was a ton of stuff like that I could get you in trouble, that I've never been very good at, and I'm still not very good at.
Well, I can relate definitely, because I was born with ADHD.
Yeah.
So I know how that goes.
And standing in line for a long time silently is not very compatible with ADHD either. And like, I don't know how much silence you had, but like I had a lot. It was just silence all the time, and my brain just didn't like that. And I didn't anticipate that it was going to be so bad, because in the real life I spent a lot of time reading books and like not talking to people and that kind of thing. But that's different than being forced to stand in a line next to people where no one is allowed to speak to each other.
When the whole basis of the program is people getting levels and talking to people and making relationships. You have to make relationships to progress in the program, because people will stand for you when you vote up. If you don't reach out to them, if they don't know who you, essentially if they don't know who you are, they're going to stand up for you. So if you don't talk to them, then good luck getting their support. Like,
yeah. That say like you don't show up, or I never hear from you, or like
I didn't even know you were here.
yeah.
I've gotten that before. What did you think of staffing? Because I'm curious, because when I staffed, the time I staffed seminars, I rebelled for the first year. If you've watched any of my interviews or about my time there, I rebelled for the first year. I was there 22 months. By the time I staffed, I loopholes into the system where I would act like I'm showing up, but like really I was telling them, hey, just hang in there, you're gonna make it through this. While everybody else was saying, hey, you slut, calling them names, I'd be like, no, you're doing good, just try and keep on pushing through. Like, what did you? So I got a lot out of the seminars personally, just because I was able to help people, and I honestly felt like I was helping people because I saw what they were trying to do and kind of went about it a different way. What was your experience of staffing? Was it negative for you? Were there positive aspects to it? How was that for you?
I liked helping people, like more talking one-on-one with them. I felt like the seminars were constantly looking for someone to make some kind of little mistake so they could get kicked out. Yeah. And I don't know if this varied more from person to person. And I always feel like it is a victory whenever someone can get something positive out of the experience, regardless of what it was like. You know what I mean? I feel like every little thing that we learn or that applies to our life or that we can help moving forward is like pulling victory from the hands of defeat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me, I'm totally able to have had a bad experience and to have you have a good experience and to live in a world where both of these are possible.
Yeah.
It just wasn't very positive for me.
Okay.
And
that's fine. That's fine. Not everybody's experience is going to be the same as mine.
I'm just more shy about more private, like it was already overwhelming. We had group therapy every day, which officially I have to state was not therapy, but not even remotely like it. We had like
Well,
attack therapy every
it was
day.
talk therapy, yeah. It was a talk therapy, which is a version of therapy, but it's not a very successful version of therapy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen, attack therapy really used in an actual counseling setting. If, you know what I mean? I don't ever see it used outside of the program.
Yeah, yeah. And to get anything, we had to do these kind of things. Like we had an attack therapy,
Yeah.
and you couldn't just vote everyone up. You couldn't just let give everyone their levels, because then it was like, oh, you're letting people slide. So they made us like attack each other. And I've heard in other facilities, like not W.W.A.S.P, but I've heard that it's physically attacking each other. But in ours, it wasn't. It was like one person stands up and then just everyone forms a line in front of that person, and one after another, they say the meanest things that they can think of to that person, about why they're bad or why they deserve something bad to happen or what they did wrong, but not using any of those terms. The program had its own particular words you could say and words you couldn't say. And you wouldn't say, oh, you're responsible for this. You wouldn't say like, oh, you're responsible for the rape. You would say that based on results, you have what you intended. Or how did you create this in your life? Or things like that. And the staff would say that. We had someone that was called a therapist. I started out with Brian Hansen, and he did not have his license to be a therapist. And he was really psychological. I was really glad that I had him because he wasn't so aggressive. Like I had been to B group, and Garth was really physically aggressive. He would throw things, he would get right up in people's faces and scream. He was really menacing. But Brian Hansen was a tall, skinny, gaunt, lanky looking man, and he wasn't so physical about it. He wasn't so threatening. He was more quiet, like calm, when he would say really horrible, awful things to people. And at the time, I was just so glad that I didn't have one of the more aggressive therapists there, that it was really hard for me to see how crazy it was there. Like I felt like I was getting off early or getting away, getting like looking at Garth's and some of the other therapists. I was just like, oh my God, I'm so glad they're not my therapist.
So they gave you therapists there?
Yeah, we had individual therapy once a week, and each group had their own therapist. And these some of these people had licenses. and we had group therapy once a day. Well, 5 days a week, not on the weekends. And then an hour of individual therapy once a week. But it's like an hour that you need to spend trying to convince this person that you're ready, you're going towards going home. It wasn't in any way useful in a therapeutic sense. And like, he wasn't there to help you figure out how to handle the problems or whatever.
So
it was like,
was that like a family rep? Like a family represent, like, did they do phone calls?
we had a family rep too.
Oh, okay. So it's different. Okay.
But we have, like, some places had a family rep that did the once a day meetings. We wouldn't have a meeting with our family rep. The family rep was like someone that you would talk to, and she was the one who would read the reflections at the end of the day, and she was the one who would like help with correspondences, like if you needed, like at one point in time I needed bras, and like coordinating to get my parents to ship them to me. Like the family rep would help with that.
Okay. What did you hear about runners and their policy on runners, and were there any runners while you were there? What do you remember about that?
Yeah, there were a couple of times that girls ran when I was there. And we'd always go into lockdown because, like, usually a lot of staff, if the girl made it any distance at all, they would take a whole bunch, they would reduce the staff on us down really, really low. They would put higher levels in charge of watching the lower levels, which usually didn't happen. We didn't have junior staff like some places did.
Okay.
So they would reduce down to the absolute bare minimum number of people, and everyone would go out looking for the girl. So this is a really small town. Laverkin, Utah is like, it's very, very small. And everyone knows what the uniforms are for CrossCreek. And everyone knows that if a girl is running away in that area, that you need to call them, and they would pay the locals, I think it was like $150 if they turned over a girl who had run away. So if you got out, like, the people who made it out, made it further, did not associate with anyone in the town, because like basically anyone that you would try to go and visit would turn you in. Only once did I hear about a girl who made it one town over to Herkin. It's spelled like hurricane, but it's pronounced Herkin. But they made it over there, and apparently she was in the living room smoking weed with the guy when Ron Garrett like opened the front door of this random stranger's house and busted her hanging out with this dude that she made friends with at there were.
Dude, I'd be so pissed. That would be such a fucking buzzkill to be
Yeah,
smoking weed and then have some. Oh my god, man. That would suck.
Must have been really evil, like sad. And then like I wonder, I can't remember who it was that happened to, but I wonder if she had problems later feeling comfortable in a setting like that, like maybe feeling comfortable in a living room, or comfortable hanging out with guys in a living room, or those
Or
kind
even
of
smoking weed, again. Maybe smoking weed and brought up that would suck, bringing up PTSD every single time you think about weed, or like think about being on a couch, or think about being in a living room. Like, wow.
Yeah. So one other girl made it to, okay. One girl coordinated with her grandmother to make it out. Her grandmother bought her a plane ticket, actually. She I think they caught her in like Oregon or Washington, when she went to the airport to get on the plane, to go to her grandmother. And because her grandmother didn't like the place, so her grandmother was her out. She was level 3, I think, when she ran. Um, there were 2 girls who ran from the upper level facility, when they went out taking trash.
Okay.
They went out to dump their trash in the outdoor dumpster, and they just kept going. They made it pretty far. They didn't like, they left the state. Um, but Ron Garrett was really determined to bring people back. I was really surprised that he was like, people met her at the airport in Oregon. Like, that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I think 2 girls went away and went to Vegas and were in Vegas for 5 days. And they had a really, really bad experience in Vegas. And I think they both got raped. And they were happy to see Ron Garrett when he was the one that showed up to collect them. I think there were girls who tried to hop the fence that didn't make it very far.
Would they
One,
get tackled? Would they get tackled?
yeah, tackled by a staff. One time I was in the sick room and I was looking, we had an overview of the bottom, the like the track area. And at that time, they were different renovations as the time went on. And at that time, there was there was like a chain link fence with the plastic things, where you can't see through it. And then there was a small gate. And I was up there, watching the courtyard because I was bored. I was sick, so I had to stay in that room, and I wasn't supposed to be out of my bed, but I was. And I got to see a girl attempt an escape. And I've never seen a kind of situation like that. She was running around the track and she was obviously like warming up. And this was a new girl that I think had been there like maybe a week or 2. And she was doing like lunges and like running around the track, and in like an oval. Um, and she was, and Bubba, who was this Samoan man who I think transferred from the Samoa facility, um, over 400 pounds, really, really large, muscled, but also chubby Samoan man. Baba was at the top of the stairs, watching the courtyard area from up there. And she did, she must have been in gymnastics because she did this several rotations around the track lining up. And then she just went directly at the gate. And she went like backhand spring over the gate, like nothing was there, and out, and she was running like that. And Bubba, I swear to God, I wouldn't have believed that he was physically capable of jumping over the gate. But he got down really low till he was like 3 or 4 feet tall, and he ran down the stairs like a force of nature or an avalanche. And he went crouched down and he was up and over the gate. And it was the kind of gate with the bar in the middle, so that I think that's how he got over. And he was off like a light chasing after her. That was the only time that we were allowed to wear tennis shoes on a lower level was when we were exercising in the yard. We had to wear slippers most of the time, unless we were on staff buddy, in which case we just had socks. So I'm sure she decided to do that because she knew she was going to have her shoes on at that time, as she could get a chance at making it farther. I do know one of my friends who told me she ran away and she made it to the cow pasture, like right next across the road from it. And she decided to hide in the cow pasture in like a muddy spot. And she covered herself head to toe in mud and she hid out there, I guess, like waiting for dark or waiting for like the heat to die down. And she got caught there.
That's crazy.
When I got there, escape was much more possible. The longer I was there, the more intense the security got. Like they had 2,000-pound magnets on the doors. Like they had 2,000 pounds of pressure and these like magnetic key card wipey things that the staff had. But when I first got there, they only had like keys with like an actual like lock. And like when I first got there, that like half of the facility outside was not bordered by building. It was like fence. And that was definitely more scalable than trying to climb over the building. Once they got it all completely surrounded on all four sides with building, and then they just had like a gate hole entrance to drive through. The number of kids that I don't think anyone tried to run and jump over the building or something like that after they did that. The only hope I had then was that someone would two girls left trying to take out trash, but I don't know what happened to them. They came back. I don't know how far they got. I know one girl was trying to take out the trash and she ran and another girl tackled her. But they didn't tell us that we had to do it. I think she was just trying to get brownie points or like have people like her or prove that she was committed to the program, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Let's see. So, did you do Trail of Lights? Did they have a graduation ceremony there?
That doesn't sound familiar at all. I don't think so. We had a graduation thing at PC2, but it wasn't really that. Like we had literally like cap and gown and graduation, like it was a high school graduation, which a lot of us graduated high school from there. But yeah, we didn't have some kind of and that's the other thing is with the seminars with the parents, they were way less confrontational and way more open to kids saying that they were mistaken or like at PC1, they had a staff from CASA come and march us all around the building outside. And it was this like big thing, like that we were proving that we were willing to be obedient, even though our parents were there and we had like more power in some way. And like I didn't know how to do what they wanted me to do because we didn't walk in line the same way the kids in Casa did. And they ended up standing up and saying, like, I don't know how to do this. Like, we don't do this at our facility. Like, I'm sorry that it's like I'm not doing what you want me to do. I just don't know what to do. And that is something I never would have been acceptable as an answer when the parents weren't there. And they just basically took that as an answer. They were like, "Oh, is that true? Can we get a staff from this facility to verify that you don't actually do that?" And I ended up like not getting in trouble for not walking in line correctly. And that was just like astonishing to me that they, because that's something I never never not get punished for something like that in the facility, but they were making nice because the parents were there.
Yeah.
Not to make it look like it's a crazy place.
What's the craziest thing you saw there? Or heard about?
Probably the rape reenactments. Brian Hansen, our therapist, along with L group therapist and another therapist, but I can't remember which one, did these processes. They called it a process in the same room that they did the seminars with, and they did this with girls who had been raped or molested as a therapeutic thing.
What about boys that have been raped and molested? They do anything to them?
Different. The boys' side was different, and it's completely separated. So if they did something like that, I wouldn't. If they did something like that, I probably would have never heard about it.
Yeah.
I heard that the way they handled the boys was more physical than the girls. When they had a girl who was really physically aggressive or threatening, they would have staff come over from the boys' side to like sit on her. So I assume that the boys' side was more. I'm sorry about the noise. I assume the boys' side was more psychological, but I don't know for sure. I'm sorry. I assume the boys' side was more physical and less abuse directed at them for things that the program thought they had done wrong.
Okay, I was just curious.
Um,
But you were saying they did these processes.
Well, no, I'm thinking of what I would have, because I would have noticed if they were doing something. I noticed when L group was doing them before we even had one. I was like,
Yeah.
what the hell are they doing? Because they would turn all the lights off in the room except for one spotlight, and they would play really loud, like they would call it imaging music that was in your image. Like they play like rap, or like hip hop, or like something that was popular at the time, music that Mormons wouldn't like. And it was part of the scene that they would do. So they would put on a play, and sometimes the girl was forced to play herself in the play, and sometimes she was forced to watch one of her friends be her in the play. And they would go through, like, complete with scripts and memorization and everything, like planned out an event. They would go through what happened before and then during and then after when she got raped. And like the whole time the therapist is on the microphone, saying the worst things that he could think of. Like, he see the door over there. You can walk out right now. you're free to go. Why don't you leave this situation before something bad happens, when the girl has no ability to actually walk away, and like, this is what you wanted, and like, this is like calling her a slut and a whore and dirty, and saying like, like, don't you wish your dad was here to save you, and like, you have what you intended. And one time they actually had, well, it was common for the staff to play an attacker, like one of the male staff, usually whichever one resembled their attacker the most. And one time they actually had the male staff member like lay on top of her and like dry humping her, just to make it more real. This was supposed to be therapeutic. This was supposed to be helpful. This was absolutely devastating to the girl who had this happen to her. They would put a giant trash can in the middle of the room or off to the side some, and it was pretty common for 4 or 5 girls to be uncontrollably vomiting into the trash can at the same time, because it was traumatic or triggering for them. It was really, really traumatizing for them. I've heard everyone I talked to about this after the fact said it was more traumatic than actually being raped, because of the things that they said, and because it reminded them of something that was already traumatic. And like, one of my friends was gang raped by 5 people, and then she went back to her friend's house, and she was raped by like her best friend, like in the same day. And this is the kind of thing that they would prey upon. They did a rape reenactment for her, and trying to make her not feel comfortable being around men or being in those kind of situations again. Like, we didn't get a choice of whether we participated or not, what we did or did not do, what part we played in the performance. And it's only pure luck that I wasn't performing as a person in any of these plays. I was still forced to watch them. We weren't allowed to look away or cover our face, and it was still really traumatic just to see it, just to see my friend go through something so traumatic, to see them ugly crying and vomiting, and then go from this traumatic experience back out into the facility and not be able to hug them for more than 3 seconds because that was considered sexual. And the urge to console someone when they are, I mean, every time they were inconsolable for days, like ugly crying for days, like throwing up all the time, And that's the kind of thing you could get in a lot of trouble for, is trying to talk to one of these people when it wasn't the appropriate time, and would go out of that crazy experience back directly into the same routine. Like, okay, now here's an hour for silence while you listen to the emotional growth tape or something like that. And Brian Hansen is still working with children at the 3 Point Center, which I think is near Laverkin, not actually in Laverkin proper. And Norm Tybo, my upper level therapist, like runs, manages the place. And he hired Brian and Thane, even though he knew Brian did some really bad things at the last place at CrossCreek. That's probably the worst thing, because it wasn't an isolated incident. It was a thing that happened that I witnessed at least 4 times. It's hard because it all blends together, and it's hard to remember this was this reenactment and this was this reenactment, and it's really loud. It's a really strong memory, and it affected me, like, in my life. It still affects me. There will be stuff that will remind me of that kind of situation, and it just makes me, like, visibly, physically uncomfortable, and I just can't hang out in a certain situation because it just reminds me too much of, like, the lead up to someone's rape reenactment. Maybe it's that the ratio of men to women is off, and I'm in a room and there's just too many men in this room and not enough women, or maybe there's too many people in general, or maybe like the texture of the wall reminds me of the carpeting of the wall of that room. But it's really hard because it affects my socializing, because, like, things that I do with friends that shouldn't trigger that fear will remind me of the lead up of someone's rape reenactment. And it's just hard to get my stomach and my body to just settle down and be calm about it, because it views it as like a threat and dangerous, and like something really, really terrible is about to happen.
Yeah. I'm really sorry you had to go through that. After the program, let's talk about when you got out. When you finally got out, how was reintegrating into society?
A lot of the stuff that the program taught us was useless, or worse than useless, to help get along with people. Like, no one wants your feedback. Like, we had to give feedback all the time, and it was like basically like the meanest thing you could come up with. And in the real world, that doesn't help you to win friends and influence people. It makes you a jerk. And being judgmental or that kind of thing just really doesn't help. And so, like, one of the reasons I got sent to the program was because I was having a hard time getting along with my peers and I needed some help making friends. And being on silence 23 hours a day in no way helps that problem. And neither does experiences like Lifeboat or like the rape reenactments or like attack therapy. None of this makes it easier for me to make friends. And I was in a different situation because a lot of kids got sent to the program because they had done drugs or had sex or were cutting on themselves or listening to the wrong kind of music or like failing school or things like that. And I didn't really have any of those things. I had gotten a D in Latin class instead of a better grade. I had to retake algebra in summer school. It was hard for my mom to wake me up to get me ready for school. I had a hard time with migraines in the morning and pain. And I was having a hard time making friends because I was really religious at the time. And I mean, I wore a dress down to the floor, and I would wear a baggy t-shirt on top. And I looked like an oddball, and none of that helped me to make friends. But the program definitely didn't help with that either. I came out and I really struggled with everyday activities that I didn't think were going to be difficult. I struggled with going to the grocery store. For 3 years, I had almost never left the facility. And to get our necessities, we would fill out a piece of paper that had, oh gosh, maybe 30 choices maximum of different things that you could order. And then your order would come back in a paper bag from the local like gas station place. And if you wanted to be really edgy, you could write in something into the thing and see if they would actually give it to you. So like write in a different kind of deodorant and see if you could get it. And then coming out of that environment and going into a grocery store was like really, really overwhelming. I was overwhelmed by the number of choices. I was overwhelmed by the colors. I was overwhelmed with that. And I was triggered by standing in line at the grocery store. Being in line would make me feel like I was waiting for my execution. Would bring up negative reminders of the program. And I had to figure out how to get the things that I needed. And now this would be kind of simple because we all have like Uber Eats and like pandemic related delivery stuff, but none of that was really available. And I started out going to smaller stores because that was way less overwhelming. I would go to natural food stores, I would go to smaller grocery stores. And like, I don't think that I really got comfortable in stores until I got my service dog. And she started helping me do like they call it line management, where I can tell her to lay down and stay at a position behind me and then move away from her and create distance between me and the person behind me in line. So I really hate it when the people are like right up next to me, behind me in line, and don't give me enough space.
Yeah.
So, because she's a larger dog, no one wants to step over the dog to get closer to you in line. It just gives me a little bit of a buffer between me and the next person, which was really helpful. Having her with me at the store meant going from positive interaction to positive interaction with people. Everyone who saw her would like her. And if they didn't like her, I just assume it's because they don't like pit bulls, because people are prejudiced. So instead of thinking that negative interactions or neutral interactions at the grocery store are somehow personal things about me, I just assumed that it was someone who didn't like my dog. And that really helped me a lot to be able to get out more and feel comfortable in public and in crowds that are bigger, and that sort of thing, which was really hard when I first got out.
Okay.
I expected it to be a lot better. I expected it to feel immediately freeing. But when I got out, the number of nightmares I had was absolutely intense and insane and almost unbearable. And in real life, like Life Bolt only happened once, and the rape reenactments happened like less than a dozen times. But in my nightmares, they could happen 10 times a night, and it could be the worst experience with one of the whole program all combined together in one thing. And I think our brains are really determined to have us avoid having some of those negative experiences happen again. And it was really hard to learn to live with when I first got out. And really terrifying, and waking up not knowing if you're there or if you're home, if you're safe or if you're not. And having a pit bull really helps me feel more comfortable. Like no one is going to come and snatch me in the middle of the night when I have a 55-pound dog that's definitely going to be opposed to that theory. And even though I wasn't transported, I still had a fear that they were going to take me against my will, because it was such a universal experience for all my friends. And a fear that because they wouldn't let me leave when I was 18, I didn't feel that sense that that I was safe because I was an adult and they couldn't send me back. Because I knew that being an adult wasn't enough to make me safe.
Okay. Do you still have a relationship with your parents?
Yeah. My dad passed away 4 years ago now, I think. 2017, 5 years ago. And I took care of him before he passed away. I took him to his dialysis appointments and tried to enjoy the time that we had together. I know some people's parents were complicit in the abuse. I still feel like my parents and many people's parents should have known better, but at the same time, the people that I hold the most responsible are the people that actually did it, and the facility and and that kind of thing. My parents would never have come up with this idea by themselves. Would never have done any of those things if they weren't being manipulated by people who had spent literally decades perfecting manipulating parents. And like, I feel like I should be the most angry at the people who actually did this.
Yeah.
And that's just worked out for me. Like,
Yeah.
I know people who refuse to talk to their parents after it because it was just so traumatic. And I understand that. I just felt like it was right for me.
For sure, and that's what counts. Knowing what you know now, is it your opinion that these places could or even or should or even could be regulated, or do you believe that they should just be shut down?
I have very little hope that they're going to be regulated effectively. I'm still working to make sure that the laws are in place to make kind of things illegal, because I think it needs a multi-pronged approach. I don't think it's enough to shut down these facilities by one method. I think we need to look at it from every angle that we can. And one of those is to regulate, to specifically outlaw the worst practices, and to make it clear that these places are doing that, so that at least it's on paper that these abuses happen, and that I mean, if I could wave a magic wand and make them all gone today, I would cut off both of my legs for the chance to do that. But I don't have the political power to do that. And these people are really good at bribing officials, especially in Utah and other states where they are really prominent. And they pick the states where they're going to be regulated less, because these people are preying on children. And they pick the kids that are going to be the least believed, that are not going to have the credibility to have their stories get believed by officials. Specifically, this it's all engineered to try to make it easier for them to get away with these kind of abuses. I would love to see these. I would love to see more wraparound care available at home, so and more parents realizing that they can get help for their kids at home in their community, and especially with the pandemic, because that has opened up opportunities for like telehealth in situations where it wasn't necessarily available before. But every time we make progress, I see the industry evolving and trying its damnedest to continue the same kind of abuses. For example, a lot of the facilities are switching from being mostly kids that are sent by parents. Well, now that parents are learning that there's abusive facilities, now some of them are switching over to dealing with foster kids who don't have a parent to call and complain if they find out that the place is abusive, or who don't have any advocates to try to get them pulled if there's a problem. And these are really vulnerable kids who need support and need real help sometimes. And getting abuse instead of help is not going to help them. Like, getting sat on by some fat staff is not going to help them. It just makes them feel more powerless. I'm working right now with Unsilenced to try to change the legislation from that side, and to try to help other survivors to empower survivors. We need to change the laws to make these specific offenses crimes, and we need people to actually enforce the laws that we do have, because child abuse is a crime already, and a lot of this is child abuse and assault, and already criminal, especially when it's applied for very minor reasons, like best practices for people that are in like a mental health facility is to use the least restrictive stuff possible. And like, for instance, if someone is a danger to themselves and other people, they can put someone in a room temporarily until they calm down. Like, for instance, if someone just starts throwing chairs and pens and every obstacle in the room at someone, yeah, they're allowed to like maybe hold their arms at their side and take them into the room by themselves and let them calm down. But like, I was put in isolation there for 45 days for very minor offenses. I wandered away from my group that was eating, and I wandered upstairs and sat with the wrong group that was watching the movie Aladdin. And I watched about an hour, hour and a half of Aladdin with that group before I got caught and taken off to the isolation room for 44 days because I was in the wrong area watching Aladdin when I was supposed to be eating. I'm sure I terrified the staff that was supposed to be watching me when they realized that I was gone. I'm sure they thought I had run away, but I had no hope that I could make it out of the facility with the amount of street smarts that I didn't have. And I just wanted to go watch Aladdin with a different group. There's been times where it's so overwhelming, and the rules and the facility and the abuse and all that is so exhausting that I would just break, and I just couldn't handle it anymore, and I'd just go do something that would piss them off. So after I'd been in isolation for 45 days, and never once in that time was I violent, aggressive, threatening, anything like that. They pulled me out of ISO. And this is some of the most extreme isolation in existence. We literally had nothing. We were in a tiny little, like, it was a tiny little room, like a broom closet, like barely large enough to lay down in. which we weren't allowed to lay down. We had to sit, not like for hours and hours a day. That we weren't allowed to have water bottles. We weren't allowed to have a sweatshirt or sweatpants. And they would deliberately make the isolation room very cold, to make it uncomfortable. Like staff would literally be sitting outside of the door with their like jackets on because that's how cold it was in the room. And they did that deliberately, to make us uncomfortable. So we had our polo shirt and a pair of shorts to wear, and it was just sit in that room most of the day. It was really extreme for me because they were willing to transport me to a facility with no other kids just so that I wouldn't see another child. Like they put me in the isolation room at the compound, and they woke me up first thing in the morning and got me dressed and transported me via a van to another facility, called South, was the name of the facility, and in the van. And then they watched me for 12 hours. Sometimes I got 15 minutes outside to walk around in the grass. Sometimes I didn't. Twice my therapist came in to talk to me, but didn't really offer any help and didn't stay very long. I still don't know why they let me out after 45 days. I wasn't doing anything different then than when I first got there. But when I got out, I was on staff buddy again, and I had had a problem with the staff before. She reminded me of one of my family members that had been like physically abusive to me when I was a kid, and I didn't want her to watch me shower. But she was the staff assigned to watch me shower. So when I was on staff buddy, we had to go with the door open and the curtain open so that the staff could watch you shower. And it was supposed to be to make sure that you weren't cutting on yourself while you were in the shower. But it was really humiliating and embarrassing and degrading and creepy. And I really didn't want that one staff to watch me shower. And so I asked, hey, can you have is there any way that we can have a different staff watch me shower? Because the staff just makes me feel uncomfortable. It reminds me of a family member that I don't really like. And so they gave me a category 3 violation. I think they called it therapy manipulation, and they put me back in the isolation room for another 30 days. And by the time I came out, I just felt so broken. My brain, I was completely unprepared for being in isolation. At the time, I was at the time, sorry. At the time, I was really religious. And so I was like, okay, great. This is gonna be a retreat. We are going to pray, we're gonna sing, we're gonna make this all like a communing with God kind of time. And like I was totally prepared to be in there for a while. I had been in isolation before for a couple hours, and I would sing and dance like in circles and try to enjoy the time that I was in there as much as I could. But this time I wasn't allowed. I had to sit down. I wasn't allowed to dance. I wasn't allowed to talk. I wasn't allowed to ask questions. We were only allowed to talk about 4 things: food, water, meds, bathroom. And at first I was like, okay, let's talk about meds. I'm worried about my meds. Is this the correct medication? Should I be given another medication? Trying to talk to the person about medication, but that's not what they wanted me to do. So they said, okay, no, you're not allowed to talk about your medication. You're only allowed to say, oh, I need my medication, in case someone forgot. And they didn't like that because I seemed to be enjoying the socialization of asking these basic questions. And it got to the point where the only way they would let me communicate was to put up fingers, like 1 to go to the bathroom, 2 because I needed water, 3 just to communicate these things, these most basic things that I needed. It was just such a terrible place. And I don't know how to describe to normal people what it's like to be in isolation for 75 days, to be on silence for months and months and months. Because I was totally unprepared for how awful it was going to be, and harmful as a mammal, as a human being. We're social animals. We're supposed to braid each other's hair and talk to our friends and eat together and talk about everyday things. And I really thought going in that it wasn't going to be a big deal, that it wasn't going to bother me. And I was really, really wrong. Like, it was a bad place.
For sure, for sure.
So at least I heard people got in isolation was 6 months straight at our facility. And the longest I heard of as a record in W.W.A.S.P was a girl who sat on her face for 18 months straight. It was a way to try to break us. And it was stuff that they got from Korean POW camps, and Russian political prisons, straight out of the psychological pressure. At other facilities, the isolation was more extreme in other ways. Some of them had isolation rooms so small that you couldn't sit up or lay down in them, like a punishment box where you couldn't ever get comfortable. Some of them had them in a hut that was like in the sun and really hot. And we heard about these from other kids. And some of this stuff was stuff we weren't supposed to talk about, but like we weren't supposed to look when a girl would get taken down or something would happen. And I felt like it was my duty to look. Like it was the only thing I could do to help, was to see what happened and remember. And some of the kids I saw get taken down are dead now. And the only people that remember are the staff that did it and us that saw. I always hoped that girls wouldn't think that I was looking at them because I was bored or because I was gawking. I wanted to see what happened, and I wanted to remember, and I wanted to complain, and I wanted to be able to tell the truth about what happened when I got out. Because, sorry, because I hoped that there would be a time when I could get out and I could tell the truth about what happened there. And not have them hide.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's see. Oh yeah, if you could go back in a time machine and not go through it, would you?
That's a really difficult. I don't know that I can say what I want to say. If I could go back and do it over again, I would definitely not go to my life would have been a lot better without it. A lot of the stuff that I struggled with was common teenager things, like, and a lot of it was stuff that I would just get better with experience. I get better at making friends by trying to make friends.
So you'd go in the time machine and change it.
I would change it. I would definitely change it. I mean, I would call 911. I would do anything to bring back my friends who lived through the experience but died from the trauma. I would throw away my life for the chance to stop that kind of abuse. as an adult, we have power, and that we didn't have when we were little. And like, if I had a time machine, I would go back and do anything to those places not exist, or and not abuse kids. Um, and I would cut off both my legs for the privilege. Like, I would give up. To not have the trauma that my friends suffered through, did not make the abuse not have happened, to shut down high impact and stop. And it's hard because a lot of us needed help. Like, it's not like some of the kids really were having a hard time and really needed someone to help them get their life on track. I mean, one of the girls came in and was like detoxing from heroin and going through withdrawal, and she had track marks all over both of her arms, and she obviously needed like serious help, but she didn't need abuse. It didn't get better because it hurt her, you know what I mean? Some girls were in gangs and were really like hard asses, like tough, and they needed extra help because pretty much all of them were severely traumatized, and that's why they were such hard asses, is as like a coping response to trauma. And none of us needed to have our life derailed by an extra traumatic event.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else that you want people to know? Like, how can they contact you? You said that you were working with Unsilenced. If people wanted to reach out to you, like, how could they contact you? If there's anything else you want people to know about these programs, maybe to adults thinking about sending their kids to a program that's open nowadays. Anything you want to say?
I don't think it's possible for one of these facilities to not be abusive. I think they're all different abusive on the scale, and I don't see an effort in the industry to self-regulate or to change the tactics. I really hope that parents and judges and people who have the authority to send kids to these places research what they're getting into and don't trust these people because they are expert manipulators. They are experts at lying. They know how to convince parents to send their kids away and to not be as afraid as they should be. People really need to think about it. Okay, if there was abuse, how would the kid let them know? Like, and people need to know that they can reach out in their community and get help there. That it's not like this is their only option, because different people in the T.T.I. and recruiters are going to act like this is a kid's only option, and it's not. A lot of our lives were made worse by this experience. I know my life was made worse by it. It left me with struggles. It didn't improve things. And like a lot of parents are worried, oh, this kid has a bad friend. What if they end up like their friend, or what if they start doing more things? But like they're insufficiently worried. What if their child is traumatized at a facility and comes back with PTSD or really serious problems? Because that's a very likely outcome. I did some math, and it must be underreporting, because I'm assuming everyone that I was unable to contact does not have PTSD. But I kind of calculated around the number of kids that I would have interacted with at CrossCreek, like how many we would have seen at the facility in the 3 years I was there. And then I looked at how many kids from there that I know have verified PTSD. And our PTSD rates were higher than active duty soldiers in a war zone. Like, it's unbelievably high. And I'm not saying that our trauma is worse than soldiers, but I'm saying when you put kids in that situation, and we're just so, troops have like stuff that they go through, like training to prepare them for going through psychological torture and abuse and being tortured or in a POW camp or kidnapped. This is something like they actively prepare them for. And soldiers are generally adults. The youngest you can join the military is 17, but the youngest you can be and be sent to a W.W.A.S.P facility was 7. And the youngest that they would accept kids at CrossCreek, I saw a 12-year-old there. And they were talking about developing brains that are learning that trauma is normal, that are learning that abuse is love, that are learning really harmful things that make it hard to do all sorts of things throughout their life. We need to change the laws. We need to make the existing laws actually get applied. We need to have the FBI investigate these crimes and treat them like crimes, and treat survivors like crime victims, not like bad kids. And I mean, kids die in facilities. There was a girl who died at the CASA facility. They still don't know for sure if she killed herself or if she was just unfamiliar with the layout of the facility and attempting to flee and jumped over a railing wrong. But she swan dived and busted her skull open on the ground because she couldn't handle being there. I had several friends attempt suicide. One time, my roommate attempted suicide in CrossCreek, and they came and scrubbed her arms with a scrubber from out of the kitchen. Like they cleaned her open wounds with like a green scouring pad. She had found a razor blade in a pencil sharpener, with what staff would sometimes keep around. And in the middle of the night, she tried to slit her wrists, and she poured a puddle of blood like this big onto the floor and smeared it all over the walls. Before she finally came out and asked for help. One of my friends cheaped about 30 days worth of her psychiatric medication and then took it all at once. And then when that didn't seem to be working, slit her wrists real bad. She took her to the hospital. She she was really, really twitchy from the medication. It was making her like shake like really bad. I think they worried she was having some kind of medical emergency. But the place was so bad that it made kids who were not suicidal when they got there want to kill themselves. Like that was a common thing that they told the parents. These are the lies that your kid's gonna say. And they said, oh, it's so bad I want to die, or I wish I was dead, or I want to kill myself. I was really lucky that I wasn't suicidal, but I'm not like that, because the place was really awful, and I understand why girls tried to kill themselves. They tried to rob us of who we were, like steal our identities, steal our personality, and take it away and replace it with who they wanted us to be, and the Mormon personality. And it was really hard to go through. So yeah, we're now I'm doing work with Unsilenced. We're writing legislation to outlaw some of the worst abuses, and trying to get these abusive facilities shut down. We're using the hashtag Unsilenced. Right now, we're not onboarding volunteers right now. We're working more with like the org side of that, trying to get it like set up. But I think this is going to be a really big organization. This is like the thing that Paris is working on, after the Breaking Code Silence came out with that. So
How can people help?
We're still at the point where we need a lot of awareness, where normal people don't know, unless they've been in the industry, that this kind of stuff is going on. We need help. We need people calling their Congress people when the new bills are come up for vote. And we need people reporting their crimes when they're within the statute of limitations, so that something can maybe get done about these facilities.
Is that it?
It's never it. There's a thousand more things we can talk about. A lot of the stuff is just like I ask myself, what did they tell us that we're not allowed to talk about? And then I talk about that, so that their secrets will get out, because sunlight is a good disinfectant, and they're committing these crimes in secrecy, and a lot of this is done behind closed doors and with confidentiality. And I mean, people need to know that this kind of thing can happen, and we all need to do everything we can, um, help support the survivors and make this a world where we're not creating new survivors. Because no one should go through this kind of stuff. Like, I don't know if they're a murderer. Like, it's not helpful. It's not abuse like this just makes kids worse.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely we're gonna do a part 2. Definitely. Are you down? Okay. And
Okay, you talk about the when they forced my friend to have an abortion. Then
yeah.
I know it's getting long. There's a lot going on, and I'm glad we're struggling to put this in chronological order, because there's kind of a flow to it, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we can definitely get into it. We can even get into it now if you want to. If you want to talk about it now, we can. I mean,
Yeah. Usually it was the other way, though. Usually it was a girl who would come in and had a baby, and they would do things later. I found out that they wouldn't get their kid back. Like, they wanted to have their kid back, and the program would say, oh, go through the program and you'll get your kid back, and they wouldn't. But for one of my friends, she went to the facility and graduated, and then she got sent back. And when she got sent back, she was pregnant, and she wanted the baby. And they took her to Las Vegas, and they took her there to an abortion clinic. And she said she wasn't willing to, like, flail a lot, because she didn't want, like, to be injured by something sharp down there. But, like, she told them she didn't want an abortion, and they did it to her anyway. And her family wanted her to not be pregnant. So I think that's why the facility did that. But that didn't stop them from using that against her later on. They made her carry around a 5-pound sack of flour like it was a baby. And they taped the baby's face on it and made her treat it like it was her child, and had to be within arm's length at all times. And that was the thing that they would do if someone had had a child, or had an abortion or a miscarriage, or like a close call with getting pregnant or something like that. I talked to her pretty soon after the abortion happened. She went off grounds with the staff and was gone for a couple of days. I think it was a couple of days. Could she have been in the sick room and I didn't see her? Maybe. But she came back and she was just couldn't stop sobbing. She was hysterically crying. And she told me later what happened. And she was really reluctant to tell me what had happened. And the context that she told me it in really made me believe her. Plus, she had been taken off grounds and disappeared. So right after, right when she first got there. So I mean, I believed her then, and I believe her now. And I feel really strongly that she should have been able to choose that she wanted her baby. You know, she should not, because it's convenient to her parents, doesn't mean that they should be able to force her to have an abortion. There were times the program would cover up for parents abusing their kids or bad situations. More than once, a kid would tell authorities or school that they had been molested or like sexually assaulted by a family member, and then the family would all decide that they were liars and then send them to the program as a way of convincing them to come clean about lying. And they went to really freaking extreme measures to convince kids to recant their sexual assault allegations, like putting kids in isolation for months, putting them on silence, not letting them get off of Hope Buddy until they signed paperwork saying that they were lying, that kind of thing. I have no idea if they were lying or not, but it sounds really freaking convenient for an abusive parent to be able to send their kid away to a facility where they'll stick them in isolation for months until they can't. I don't even know how that would possibly be reliable as testimony, like when it's so coerced.
For sure.
When I got there, I was with D group. And a lot of the girls in D group had been raped or molested. And I think that's why I saw so much of this kind of stuff, is because that was the group that I got put in. And I don't know why. I think it's because they didn't know where else to put me. But just putting me in an environment where so many of my friends had been assaulted was a scary thing for me, because I came out of the place thinking that 90 or 95% of people were going to get assaulted in their life. And that's not a realistic statistic. And I'm not even sure that was a good idea to put that many girls who had been assaulted with other girls.
Yeah.
Like that, because in a group where 90% of the girls had experienced that was probably a constant trigger.
Yeah.
Like a constant reminder of that. But
Well, I'm definitely down to do part two for sure.
Okay.
You want to, yeah. Thank you so much for coming on, though.
Yeah. Thanks for having me and for
Yeah.
listening to stuff. I'm hoping that the more news gets out here, the more families will be able to help their own kids and help everyone to like at least make some progress in reducing the number of survivors. So thanks for interviewing so many people and for helping to spread the word. And for listening to so many kids that really needed to be listened to.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps when people feel like they're heard. So that's what I'm trying to do. What I'll keep on doing. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and we'll definitely do a part 2 probably in a couple months.
Okay.
Just like take like if you want, just like make some notes about what you want to talk about next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure you'll have some more stuff to talk about. Probably. You just seem to have a really vivid, very good memory. From what I can tell, you have a very I haven't been able to remember like the detail that you remember. If that makes sense.
Trying to remember is like being in a hurricane where different memories are hitting me like debris, one after another, after another, after another. So sometimes I struggle to put the whole story in chronological order.
Yeah.
But this happened in 1999. It's been 20 years, and I still remember it more vividly than I remember most things. It was really vivid and traumatic, and I'm I was hoping when I was there that my memory of it I was hoping when I was there that my memory of it would help other people. I am sorry about the background noises. But yeah.
I just feel like it'll help a lot of people. It'll help a lot of people here. Go ahead.
I'm hoping we can do a part 2. We can talk about some more weird stuff.
Oh yeah, just like I said, take some notes, and then we'll do a part 2 in a couple months, probably, for sure.
Okay.
We'll for sure do a part 2. It'll be in a couple months, though.
Okay. Yeah. No rush.
Yeah.
I got stuff in my life too, so.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome hearing this interview. It's awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Good day. Bye.